Chapter 1. Yolanda stepped on a fairly crowded bus heading north and took a seat next to a lady that nearly immediately launched a monologue that she may have self-deceived herself into believing it was a dialogue. When the bus finally arrived in NYC, the chatterbug lady said someone would be coming to pick her up and that Yolanda was welcome to catch a ride with them. Yolanda declined. Actually, she tried to decline possibly because the lady had at some prior time latched onto the super salesperson strategy of never hearing the word no. Off the bus, Yolanda waved while backing away from Miss Chatterbox. One step, another step, then she firmly stated, "Gotta go," turned around and walked away at max speed. Yolanda's backpack had very little in it. She planned to pick up a few items at a Second Life store before there was a need to do laundry. She would find some opportunity somewhere for a shower, put on the new things from the Second Life shop, and donate her most recently worn clothes to the next Second Life shop she passed. Having arrived in New York City a little after 4 in the afternoon, put Yolanda in the middle of the escape from work crowd. It was dizzying for a girl who had grown up in the less than bubbling populations of small desert towns out west. Even dizzying for one who had passed through LA and Miami a few times. New York City can truly be a vertigo assist. Yo indicted internally. Yo ricocheted off shoulders and bodies in the direction of least pedestrian occupancy, only to see a slightly vacant space disappear and bump or be bumped by yet another person. It was a game at which many others seemed to excel. They could play it without seeming to pay much attention to it. And they never lost to Yo. The need to be watching out in the hectic, noisy atmosphere soon fatigued Yolanda. Everyone else is better at this game. No way to win. Why not take a break? Yo counseled herself. Gallery. The sign caught Yo's eyes. She looked left and she was hooked. Still being bumped by passers-by, Yo was mesmerized by a kinetic work of art constantly changing on a large flat display screen inside the oversized front display window. Yo entered gallery and headed for the other side of the kinetic art she had seen from the large front display window. 3 large flat-screen displays were dedicated to a variation on the forever transforming piece of art that Yo had observed from the outside. The constantly changing displays on one of the large screens seemed to be somewhat correlated to the ever-changing work viewable from the outside sidewalk. Another large screen presented an original work of art, a work of art seemingly strongly influenced by Picasso. Was this static image sublimated behind the activity presented on the display? The third screen presented a looping YouTube video describing the integration of this work of art with a phenomenon in, well, the site remained undisclosed to preserve the simplicity of its environment, at least for a little while longer. The host location looked tropical. Palm trees were nearly still in near no breeze stimulation, off to the side of a beautiful calm ocean scene. A game of water bobble was being played among humans and dolphins. At one point in the video, an olive-skinned little girl of possibly 10 years of age was being interviewed. "I come here every morning. My mother needs her rest, so I leave home for a while every morning so she can have some quiet time. One day when I came to the bay, dolphins were playing. I entered the water to about waist deep and threw an empty plastic bottle to them. They bobbed it up to each other and eventually back to me. I threw it back out in the deeper water, again. The dolphins retrieved it again, passing it among themselves and finally to me. They came closer and closer to me. My throwing the bottle out into the bay and their retrieval and returning it to me repeated over and over again until I got tired and decided to return home to cook some breakfast for my mother. Next day, the dolphins started a similar game with me, only this time the dolphins had found a beach ball floating around out there and brought it to play with me. Same good fun, but better with a beach ball. Told my friends about it that afternoon. Next morning, 6 of my friends and I played water bobble with the dolphins while we were about waist deep in the water. Now the water bubble game happens every morning among the dolphins and whoever shows up. The video explained that audio and visual from the water bobble game was sampled and parts of the sample were integrated with the digital data associated with the pixels of the artwork displayed on the other first of the 3 screens to impose constant change of color, form, and texture on the dynamic artwork. The ever-changing result continued to mesmerize Yolanda. Yolanda noticed a special song, among her favorites, was coming from speakers behind her. She turned to see an ocean sunset displayed on yet another large flat screen. Pixels in geometric patterns were forming, growing, contracting amid the ocean sunset image, in direct correlation to the rhythm and tonal variation of her favorite song. It lulled her further into the ocean of art. A bold print placard above the display included the phrase, "There may be no limit to the number of ways these many art forms can be integrated to create new works of art." In the midst of her visit to creativity to the max, Yolanda realized how hungry she was. Time to go find some food, she admitted to herself. She could have done a quarter turn to her right, but turned around the opposite direction for a 3/4 swirl sweeping view of the gallery. She stopped the twirl on the direct path to the exit, but she had seen something for which she had to turn back a quarter turn. It was a more conventional painting of a person, a man, a woman, whose face, a full frontal glancing directly at the viewer, was the only seemingly non-moving component of the person. Is it hair or feathers that are in a swirl around his head? Yolanda asked herself. Is there a bird whose feathers are so colorful in so many hues? Does that phrase even have meaning beyond the redundant? How would anyone describe this person? He or she is focused beyond distraction in the facial area, in spite of swirling colorful action all around. Is he or she inviting the viewer to silent communion, dialogue ad infinitum, or declaring that this person is so solid internally that nothing can disrupt his essence? Entranced, a soft but steady voice said from behind Yolanda. Yolanda turned slowly. She was amazed at how calm she was, to see the apparent proprietor smiling calmly. Caught me? Yolanda asked. John Krauss is the artist of the painting you were viewing. It tends to entrance the viewer, the proprietor stated simply. Yes. Yolanda admitted calmly. Yes. Yolanda and the proprietor remained quiet while viewing the painting for a few more moments. The painting was 15 to 20 feet away, but Yolanda decided not to go closer today. This distance, this feeling, this will be my moment today. I will come again soon and look closer, Yolanda promised herself. Thank you, Yolanda said as she turned and left the gallery. A gentle "come again" traced Yolanda's exit. Chapter 2. Yolanda bought a pastrami sandwich and took a seat amid the outside hosted umbrellas, benches, and people in a rush. Even as they sat eating, most of them seemed to be in a rush. 2 bites later, Yo was totally dissed with herself for getting caught up in the other people's rush and chewing her own food in such a rush. Don't I have any more self-determination than this? She forced herself to chew slower. A chisel-handsome young man came along with an afro that seemed to be of perfect length. Would it be necessary to trim his afro every 4 hours for it to be that perfect? Yo internally pondered. The young man was apparently consumed by his cell phone conversation. His body language and speaking tone conveyed a moderate edge of irritation. You're the one who insisted that we enter the contest, the young man said firmly but still fairly quietly, as he stopped at a table bench, a couple of tables to the side of Yolanda's table. He was quiet for quite a while, as he apparently listened to the person on the other end of the conversation. There was a note of resignation in his posture that his perfectly tailored suit could not hide. His turn again. I can't get someone else. We're registered by our Facebook accounts. If I found someone to replace you, they would have to use your Facebook account name and password to get into the stadium. I don't know your rubber. That's your password? He listened. He blushed, but his facial expression reflected little, if any, hope that the person on the other end of the line was going to come around to some prior agreed-upon plan. Yes. Now I have your account name and password, but I wanted to do this with someone special. I thought that someone was you. Yolanda snatched glimpses of his face. Easy to look at his beautiful face and profile in that perfectly tailored suit. Through the facial expressions alone, Yolanda thought she could perceive his apparent effort to read between the lines of what the other person was saying to him. Eventually, the conversation seemed to end, as the young man quietly put his cell phone in an interior jacket pocket. He sat on the bench, facing in reverse direction, leaning his back into the edge of the table. He may have been slumped for a moment, but he sat up, breathed deep, seemingly inflating his business suit to perfect model lines. He turned to look directly at Yolanda. Yolanda darted her gaze away, but brought it right back to his magnetic aura. 50-50? The young man asked. 50-50? Yolanda returned the question. I'm in a contest with a friend. The contest starts in half an hour at the stadium. My friend just called to say she can't come. Will you take her place and be in the contest with me? If we win the contest, we'll split the winning prize 50-50. The handsome young man strained with pleading eyes that were not filled with hope. A trace of hope, yes, but not filled with hope. What kind of contest? Yolanda asked. Can I tell you as we go? We've got just enough time to get there. I'll tell you on the way. Yolanda challenged. Give me your driver's license and I'll come. The young man hesitated for a mere moment, pulled his wallet, pulled his driver's license and gave it to Yolanda. Yolanda gave it right back, barely glancing at it. She smiled and said strongly, Let's go, Luke. They both laughed at her inadequate ID check procedure and took off in the bump and spin reality of end-of-workday New York City. And Yo yelled as she trailed along by a somewhat loose handhold. What? Luke returned with a question. The contest? Yo reminded him. It's the International Chopsticks Pickup Event. Luke replied, as if the series of words he gave as the name of the contest provided more than anyone needed for an explanation of the event. Yo returned with, Was that phase 1 of the contest when you picked me up? What? Luke asked, then caught her meaning, laughed and partially answered. No. The contest is at the stadium. It's the first annual event. Then he continued, with an explanation of how the event would go. You'll be given a set of rubber chopsticks. I'll be given a bag. You'll go with some other guy who has his own bag. I'll go with some other gal who has her own chopsticks. At the shotgun start of your heat of the event, you and your partner walk, run. Remember, the chopsticks are rubber, so you won't poke yourself or injure yourself in any way if you fall or something like that. You and your partner will move across the stadium soccer field as fast as you like or as fast as you can go. As you go, you'll pick up little packages with the rubber chopsticks. Can't use your hands, and put them in the bag carried by your new guy partner. You try to pick up and put in the bag as many of the little packages as possible before you get to the other side of the field, or before they shoot the shotgun a second time. You get extra points if you get to the opposite side of the field, the finish line, with your partner before the official timer shoots the shotgun the second time. You also get points for the number of little packages your partner has in his bag. My partner and I will be doing the same thing, but we may be in a different heat of the race. Goofy contest. Yo commented. Supposed to be goofy and fun. Luke paraphrased her event assessment as he nearly pulled Yo along. And you can earn big prize money, $25,000 to the first place team. $25,000? Yo gasped. Then reset her external expectation barometer with a subtle question. Music? Yo asked. Music. Luke looked back at Yo, then guessed her meaning. Yeah. Probably music too. Let's move it. He pulled Yo's hand a slight bit harder as he moved along a little faster. Is that it? Yo asked. The contest, is that all there is to it? No. Luke answered simply. That other guy, the guy who bags the little packages you pick up with the chopsticks, he'll probably treat you very well, dance around you, sing to you. He'll treat you well, because he doesn't want you to dump him at the finish line. When he and you turn in your bag of little packages at the finish line, you have a decision to make. You can choose to enter your bag of packages with him as your contest partner, or you can tell the officials you are keeping me as your partner. Your choice. My choice. Yo repeated, knowing she would return to this guy at least till he made it quite clear that he wasn't interested in her, or until he proved himself to be a jerk. Your choice. Luke said firmly. And you? Yo asked. I'll be out there helping bag what some other contestant picks up with her set of event-provided rubber chopsticks. Yo noticed Luke used a distancing "some other contestant" to refer to his partner for the event. Was that to make that partner seem more like an it than another girl? What happens if your partner chooses you as her new partner for the contest when you two get to the finish line? Seems like that could leave me out of things. Yo confronted one possible outcome. Luke turned back and told what Yo thought was surely a lie. I can't sing or dance. My partner will dump me for sure. They both let the laughter linger comfortably as they approached the event check-in gate at the stadium. The lines. The lines. How many participants are they expecting for this chopsticks pickup thingy? Yo asked in amazement at the number of people waiting to get in the stadium. Luke checked the time. It's almost halftime of the soccer game. All these people in line must be among those entered for the halftime main event. The International Chopsticks Pickup Event. I don't notice any of these folks wearing soccer team jerseys as a sign of support for a favorite soccer team. Most people in these lines must be here for the International Chopsticks Pickup Event. By far, most of those coming for the soccer game would have entered the stadium long ago. Plus, this gate entrance is the one designated for the ICSPU event. Luke somewhat repeated. All, or nearly all, of these people must be in the ICSPU event. Yo speculated. Apparently, $25,000 prize money creates interest. Yes. Luke agreed as he scanned the lines. Hundreds, thousands slipped out loud as he stood in awe of the number of people and the costumes. Yo commented. We have to win the $25,000 top prize because we haven't got a chance in the costume category of competition, unless they give a prize for disparity of partners' costumes. You being a buffed businessman as opposed to my plain Jane street person garb. Luke looked at Yo much closer than before, then asked before he could stop himself. Nothing plain about you. Street person? You? Many thoughts impaled Yo's stream of thoughts. As a desert wanderer, she had survived with less resources, in some ways, than the resources available to a city street person. So different, but she had survived as a desert person. I could do a street person. She thought proudly but eased through the moment with no. Then with a laugh. Not yet. I'm not a street person yet. Luke was looking at all the people in line, probably consumed with the realistic possibility that he and Yo would not be able to get into the event. Did he hear Yo's last remark? They did get into the ICSPU event. The ICSPU event ran in heats as the main event for the soccer game halftime. Individually packaged condoms were randomly spread across the soccer field, from goal to goal. For each heat of a race, some set number, a 100, of participant partners were allowed to enter the field from the one gate for the International Chopstick Pickup event. They aggregated along the end zone of the same end of the playing field. When the starting horn blew, turned out not to be a shotgun, the next heat of 100 or so participants rushed across the soccer field. The ladies used rubberized flex chopsticks to pick up the individually wrapped condoms and place them in the plastic bag held open by their assigned partner. The serenading and dancing by the guys of the partnerships made the progression across the field look more like a bobbing dot work of kinetic audio art than a race. A second horn signaled the end of a heat. No more condom pickup after the second gun signal. Only 3 of the couples in the first heat had crossed the entire field, for which they were each awarded an additional 100 condom count. The rest of the couples were distributed haphazardly across the field. The decision about keeping or dumping a condom bagging partner was very confusing to those in the ICSPU event, and probably indiscernible to most of the spectators, most of whom had come to see the soccer game and probably knew very little about the ICSPU event. Finish line processing was followed by contestants going out the gate at the end of the soccer field, where the International Chopstick Pickup event heat had ended. The International Chopstick Pickup event provided transportation back to the other side of the stadium, where all ICSPU participants had entered the stadium. While a refresher supply of condoms were scattered across the soccer field by at least 100 volunteers, the PA system master of ceremonies announced that the winning team of the entire contest would be receiving a lifetime supply of condoms. The announcement brought laughter, applause, oohs and ahs, which were fully crescendoed by the big bang start of the next heat. The wild costumes, the serenading and moves, made the next heat and all after it unique in their own way. The ICSPU event results were nearly immediately posted on Facebook and on internal and external huge digital stadium displays. As Luke and Yo watched the result postings ticker taping across the bottom of the external stadium display screen, and replays of the bobbing, dancing, and serenading on the main window of display, Luke complained. The end of the competition was Russian roulette. The fear of being dumped twice in the same event, was more threatening to me than the thrill of knowing we could win the grand prize of $25,000. Yolanda offered her take on it. A bit nervous for me too, but maybe not so bad for me because I had no time to think about much of it. I didn't even know about the event before you asked me to substitute for your girlfriend. Luke laughed. Worse. I had already been dumped once, before we even got to the ICSPU event. My girlfriend, ex-girlfriend now, got me into the contest a couple weeks ago. Today she called me, an hour ago and said she wouldn't be coming. She dumped me. I could have been dumped 3 times in one day. And the last 2 times would have been out there in front of all those people in the stadium. Yo tried to soften the facts. Most of those people wouldn't have noticed. They applauded and laughed at the halftime chopsticks pick up the condom circus, but after that, don't you suppose they just wanted the field cleared so they could watch the second half of the soccer game? Maybe. Luke conceded. And by the way, Yo inserted. Thanks loads for not telling me that the little packages were individually wrapped condoms. Just a little oversight. She laughed. Would you have gone to the event with me if, after we just met, I took you by the hand and said, come, let's go pick up condoms? They both laughed. No answer was necessary, and Yo gave none. Slightly changing the subject, Yo guessed. Luke, I bet you've never been dumped before. Luke remained quiet. Yo decided to complicate the issue. If my bagger's registered partner had finished before he and I finished, and she chose to keep her registered event partner, I would have been dumped. And, if you and your partner finished before my partner and I, if your event competition partner decided to keep you, I'd have been dumped by the system. Now that's a non-plus double dump if there ever was one. Luke countered. I think you would have inherited the last guy that got dumped in the sequence you mapped out, but no matter. Too complicated. Way too complicated and stressful. I'm not going to do the next International Pickup Chopsticks event unless they make it a lot simpler. A lot simpler. That was way too stressful. Let's walk a while, burn off the stress. After a walk, can I treat you to dinner? Yes. Yo laughed and noted. That will let 2 of us feel undumped. 2 undumped celebrations at one dinner. Efficient. As if she cared anything about efficiency, with someone as handsome as Luke at her side. Luke joined the laughter as they continued their walk. Suddenly Luke turned to Yolanda and asked, What is your name? We've been rushing all the time, and I never asked your name. What is your name? Chapter 3. New York Police logo painted vans with sirens blaring and lights flashing came from both directions, and stopped curbside along the street where Luke and Yolanda had now stopped and turned to see what the commotion was. Doors swung open rear and both sides of several of the police vans. Huge men. Huge, exited the vans with what looked like automatic weapons, including what looked to Yolanda like AK-47s. Their bulletproof vests made them look robotic. The men were huge beyond the 99th percentile even without the vests. They seemed bigger than most NFL linemen, and definitely appeared to be in condition. They were moving fast. A group of them semicircled a group of a dozen or more people, including Luke and Yolanda, yelling, "Apprehension! Those outside our perimeter, disperse and leave the area immediately." The huge men in uniform split the apprehended group into 3 smaller approximately equal groups, and pushed them toward the curbside doors of the 3 large police vans. Yo was terrified of what was happening, but grateful to be in Luke's group. "Not police," Luke whispered to Yo as he held her hand, to keep them together and to reassure her that he was there with her. Luke's comment puzzled Yo. Their captors looked like police, though a lot less physiologically diverse. These guys were huge but well-conditioned based on the way their uniforms fit their bodies, with midsections being the smaller, instead of the dominant part of their physique. Yo didn't ask Luke to explain why he had said "not police," but his remark continued to trouble her thoughts. More buff men in police uniforms tended to open doors of the waiting vans. The detainees were jostled in 3, 4, or 5 to a van with nearly as many officers in each van. Van doors were immediately slammed shut and the vans eased away. Yo was terrified but grateful she was in the same van as Luke. "No talking," one of the officers in their van commanded. "No sounds. No moving. Stay seated." The captives couldn't see out. Areas where side windows might be located were covered with slide vinyl sheets, and the view out the front was blocked by a floor-to-ceiling barrier behind the driver and front passenger seats. A fairly buff young man harshly asked, "What is this?" He received a curt, "Shut up." Silence reigned. Yo could sense that the van was being driven on a zigzag course. Minutes passed. No sirens. Yo counted slowly to herself to be able to estimate time and, indirectly, miles traversed. But her nerves and her attempts to monitor the expressions of their captors stole her thoughts away from her counting, and thus her mileage-tracking attempts were lost. How much time did pass? Yo wondered if any of the other captives had been successful in any attempt to keep track of distance and/or time. Facial expressions among detainees became more and more sullen and panicked as time passed. Eventually, all 3 vans pulled onto what Luke and Yolanda guessed to be a gravel road. One of the huge police-uniformed young men rushed through the cabin, sliding the vinyl window covers back. Yolanda and Luke could see one of the other vans parked next to theirs. "Everybody out," an officer commanded. Yo thought it seemed that all vans had arrived at the same parking area. The police herded the detainees out of the vans in a rush. All captives were herded into the same large plain-looking building. Inside, actions were all a rush. All captives were ordered to strip off absolutely all clothing and objects, and coerced through brief communal showers in a large adjacent room. A young guy among the captives started to protest. "Who do you think you?" One of the massive guards' fists gut-busted him, and the young man slid to the floor gasping for air. There were no more protests. Yo was so embarrassed to be in the buff that she nearly froze to inaction, but inaction was not an option. Luke was so chisel-lean handsome that Michelangelo would have dropped his brushes and chisels to avoid the futility of trying to capture the young man's essence. Luke stayed between Yo and the rest of the men, ostensibly to shield her from their attention. It seemed to Yo that Luke easily could have fended off most of the other detainees. But the buff hulks that had taken them prisoner were a different matter. They were not mere bristle mass. Yo got the impression that any one of the massive guards could have imposed his way on any or all of the captives, including Luke. After showers, when they returned to the other large room, all their possessions were gone. There were 4 groups of stacks of green smocks, small, medium, large, and extra large. Everyone was ordered to pick from among the stack of most appropriate size, and dress in the green smocks. The guards marched the captives to an adjacent building in which they waited for food, in a rustic buffet line where the captives were given no options in terms of what went on their respective plates. Yo received a plate of what the servers wanted her to have, and she moved ahead. Though not as buff as the original captor of police, the food servers looked like NFL linebackers. The food servers at the rustic buffet line were all more massive than all detainees, including Luke. A huge server sneered at Luke, stuck his hand directly in the relatively warm lumpy stew brew, laughed and dropped a handful of the mush on Luke's plate. The server leered at Luke, seemingly daring Luke to say or do anything. Luke and Yo moved on. The servers stayed behind the service line, intermittently leering, jeering and gesticulating at the detainees. The original massive guards who had imposed the detainee roundup in Manhattan were relieved by yet another set of massive 9, who were also dressed like full police personnel. Captives obeyed orders to sit on the floor, back against the wall. They just held their plates of food in their laps. No appetite. A few infrequently sipped from their respective water bottles. "Time to go," announced one guard. He didn't seem to care that no one had eaten anything. Detainees were hustled out and back into the same vans. One of the chiseled huge guards approached the van in which Yo and Luke sat. "Security types?" Someone among the captives murmured, questioningly, to no one in particular. The question went unnoticed or purposely unanswered. One guard wore a modified stiff-looking glove on his right hand. He had placed what looked somewhat like a .30-6 bullet in his right hand, thumb at the most noticeably modified, blunt end of the object. The guard quickly lashed his arm in through the van window, placing his hand with the bullet in front of Luke's right eye. Bam! The noise was deafening to Yo. Yo felt pain in the back of her neck at the same time she thought she noticed Luke seemed to rise and sway.